What's up, everybody? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm your host for You Got Boston, and this is our second episode, first one that isn't live, and this is my second attempt because I just recorded a whole segment of an episode while on mute. So figuring this out as we go, but really excited to have this platform to be able to talk about the Celtics and to be able to talk about things behind the scenes, which is really my intention, is to give you guys some perspective of what's going on in practice, what's happening, before games, after games, at community events. So not just giving you my take from a basketball lens, although I'll inevitably do that, but also giving you all the opportunity to hear things that maybe aren't being covered as much by the mainstream media. So that's my intention with this new podcast, You Got Boston. But my DMs are open. If you have suggestions, thoughts on how this should go, how I should go about kind of recording this show and producing it, it'll be coming out 3 times a week for the most part. Ideally, once a week, I'll have a guest on. So working on securing some of those for the coming weeks. And then once a week, we'll be going live. So probably like a Sunday mailbag. So you can subscribe to this show on YouTube, both on my YouTube channel, which is You Got Boston podcast. CLNS will have this on their platforms. And then on Spotify, you can find the show as you would any other show. You Got Boston is the podcast name. So wherever you listen, like, subscribe, review, comment, need all the initial engagement that I can get as we kind of get this thing off the ground. So really appreciate those of you who are excited about this and tuning in. And I promise this will be, I'm going to put everything into this. So hopefully it'll be a show that you all enjoy. And I know the number one critique that I get is that I talk too fast. So I will try to slow down. I literally have it at the top of my computer screen right now. It says talk slowly. I've had it there for the last 20 years of my life effectively. So it might not make a huge difference, but we'll do my best to try that. But for now, I'm recording this on Wednesday evening. This will probably be out by Thursday morning. And I'm here to kind of discuss what we just saw, which was Derrick White, Jrue Holiday, Jason Tatum, and Team USA just handily defeated South Sudan, which is a team that I think I'm not the only one that has grown incredibly fond of this team. Just such an awesome basketball team, such an awesome story, with just the way that they have quickly assembled into a basketball powerhouse, really. I mean, they've looked like one of the more formidable teams in this field, not only to qualify for the Olympics, but then to actually be this effective being here. It's been really, really fun to watch. So we got to see Team USA face South Sudan for the second time in just a couple of weeks, the first official time for pool play. And I was really impressed by what we saw from South Sudan, but also honestly what we saw from Team USA. So I want to start off by talking about my perspective on the Olympics, because I think if you're online, and I'm sure many of you are on Twitter, you're probably seeing a whole lot of discourse around like who's the guy, whose team is this? Is this LeBron's team? Is this Anthony Edwards' team? Is Jason Tatum being a role player where he should be like the primary guy who's being featured? And I personally just disagree with the fundamental way that we're discussing basketball in the context of the Olympics. Like the Olympics are about winning the gold medal. I'm a basketball only fan and viewer, but I've been watching everything because the Olympics are awesome. And I'm putting on my alarm for the 5 a.m. Olympic trials for women's gymnastics because it's just so fun to see all of this. And so I think that we lose sight of it when it comes to the basketball portion of the Olympics because there's all these big names. There's way more familiarity. I mean, I think most people are NBA fans first and foremost, and they're kind of tuning into the Olympics because it's something to do right now this time of year where there's really no other basketball. I mean, there's literally no other basketball in late July. And so I think we're at this point where it's just bizarre because, the goal is winning, right? It always is. I mean, that's literally the point of basketball. But I think we're losing sight of that in the Olympics because it's supposed to be an opportunity to like showcase agendas or showcase like who's rising up, who's MVP. And for that reason, like Tatum's DNP became like a global news story as, Joel Embiid's at today. That's another massive story. But in reality, this is a USA team that's handily defeated 2 opponents so far, Serbia and South Sudan. The only 2 opponents they've had to face. They were undefeated in exhibition play, though not quite as dominant. But it's working. What they're doing is working. And so you have to give Steve Kerr and the coaching staff credit for that, for the lineups that they've been able to put out there. Maybe you say it's just talent. They're such a talented team. It's really not about anything the coaching staff's done. Fair point. Maybe that's accurate. But at the same time, what they have put together is 2 wins in Olympic pool play. And I think people shouldn't lose sight of the fact that winning a basketball game against a team that maybe has teams that have been playing together year round. Not so much these two that we've seen, but when we see, Germany and Australia, teams that have a lot of continuity, like that is a disadvantage. In USA, you're assembling together, a bunch of guys that haven't really played together. And especially, the thing that I'll harp on is a bunch of guys that are now playing a completely different role than the role that they're used to playing. And so I think first and foremost that what they've done so far has been impressive, and that if you're rooting for Team USA, you should be happy to see that they have 2 wins so far, and that should be the primary storyline, is kind of praising the guys that have been playing really well, and there's been quite a few of them. That's first. So the second thing is that I look at Team USA with a lens of like, okay, which guys are actually making a sacrifice or a change to their game? So somebody like Steph Curry, he's used to being the primary offense of the teams that he's on, especially the last few years. He's been really driving the entire Warriors organization, really carrying everything offensively. And now you see that he's trying to kind of figure out where to pick his spots. He was 1 for 9 against South Sudan. Some of that is just natural shooting struggles. It happens with basketball. But then some of it is like he doesn't need to be taking 15 shots, right? He's not going to be able to shoot his way out of a funk the way that he might in the NBA. And so someone like him, he's like in this adjustment period where he's struggling to kind of figure out his role. I think Tatum has been similar. Tatum's a rhythm player. We know that about him, right? He's not a spectacular sharpshooter, but he's a rhythm player. And so in games where he has been, gets to the rim early on, gets a couple layups, gets some free throws, now he can hit those threes. And he's not going to get those opportunities here playing USA basketball with such a loaded roster. And so I think Tatum's someone that's been trying to figure out where his spots are. And then, first game of Olympic play, I don't need to recount it. Obviously, Tatum didn't play. He was benched. DNP, massive story. This game, he starts. He ends up playing 17 minutes. Doesn't do a whole lot, but I thought he was solid. Played pretty good defense. Got some rebounds, 5 boards. That was 4th best on the team. Scored 4 points on 5 shots, I think. On 4 shots. He was 2 for 4 from the field. So nothing to write home about, but also nothing to complain about. He had 1 turnover, didn't make any critical mistakes. So I don't think that his play needs to be scrutinized. He talked after the game and said that it was a little bit humbling to sit. It was humbling to be benched completely. Mentioned some of the recent accolades that he's racked up. And I don't think that he said that to brag or to say that he deserves minutes, but just that for him, it was an unusual experience, right? So we know that a guy like him, this maybe was the first time in his entire career that he's gotten a DNP coaching decision for no other reason other than you're out of the rotation for this one, right? So I give a lot of credit to those guys because they're trying to figure out how to navigate being in a completely different spot than they have been for their entire career. Someone like Anthony Edwards, I think he's kind of continuing to be, I'm a primary scorer, right? And he's been solid, honestly. So you can't criticize that too much, but he's not really making that much of an adjustment. I mean, there was a couple times today where there was other options to go to, and he was like, I'm going to trust my shot. And he was 4 for 9 from the field, so it's not terrible. So it's a solid number. But again, he's not really making that adjustment of like, okay, I'm going to try to figure this out. And neither, Curry took 9 shots too, right? So they both took 9. A handful of players took 9. Bam took 10 shots, but he really had it going today, so you really can't fault that. And then I've been really impressed by guys like Devin Booker, had 6 assists today, game high. He's been really efficient. It seems like his shot's really feeling comfortable. And he's been able to find a rhythm despite coming in weird spots. He's been starting, but definitely not getting nearly as many touches as he's been getting during the year. So I guess I'm just saying all this to start because we're going to be talking about the Olympics quite a bit over the next few weeks. And I just wanted to share my personal philosophy on how the Olympics should be judged and how we should be discussing players is less in terms of how many points are they scoring, but more in terms of their buy-in to play the role that they need to play on this particular Olympic team. And I think that Tatum's had a little bit of a challenge just because he is such a rhythm player. We know that if you've been watching his career, he's the guy that sometimes doesn't even score in the first quarter, right? As he's kind of getting a feel for things. So now you totally have to ditch that and you have to think about, he has to find a rhythm with 4 shots, right? Maybe this will give him a renewed appreciation and respect for his teammates, like guys like Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser that have to come in and be effective. I don't think he lacks that appreciation, but this might give him just a different perspective and a different lens. And that's a win on its own. He's definitely not getting as banged up as he does during the regular season. And nobody really is, just because you're not playing, even the guys that are playing the most minutes are playing 25 minutes, right? Because it's only a 40-minute game. And obviously they're going to get the bench in much more than during an NBA game. So everybody's getting a little bit more rest, but I just wanted to flag, I think that Tatum's in a particularly unique position. Devin Booker falls in that category as well, but he's been more effective at this point, in adjusting to that role. Though defensively, I think Tatum's been really good. So I don't know if people care about defense. They should. It's a big part of winning a gold medal here. So I guess I'll just say, I don't think that the Tatum whole thing has been as big of a storyline in my eyes than the media has generally made it. So on this platform and this podcast, that's kind of how I want to think about it. And then there's the group of guys that haven't really had to adjust a whole lot. And that's because they were role players back in the NBA and they're still role players here in the Olympics. And nobody has done that better than Derrick White so far. I thought Derrick White was one of the best players on the court today, maybe even the best, although he didn't put up crazy numbers, but he just literally did everything right. Scored 10 points, 3 of 3 from the field, all 3-pointers. Literally, didn't miss a shot, which is just kind of crazy that you're coming in and you don't even have no rust, like hits the big ones. Defensively, he was huge, a pair of steals, a block. I thought he actually had a couple blocks they didn't award for him, so thought maybe he got a little robbed in the stat sheet there. But the stat sheet is just not going to do it justice. And I'm watching these games really carefully, especially because normally I upload clips on Twitter as I record my computer or my TV, little videos, then I upload those and I post highlights for people. And I'm not able to do that because the Olympics send me a copyright warning because apparently with international play, it's a lot more strict. So I'm really just locked in watching these games. I'm not writing. I'm not posting anything. I'm just watching basketball. And Derrick White is literally playing flawless basketball right now. And that should be the story from this team so far because he wasn't even supposed to be on this roster. He was a last-minute substitute. He wasn't on Team USA's official roster, right? He didn't make it. He missed training camp. He flew commercial to meet the team over in Abu Dhabi. Didn't really know the system. First time playing Olympic basketball. He has played FIBA before, and he came in and he really has been turning things around. I mean, it didn't look like he was going to be in the rotation early on there with the exhibition play. Comes in the second half for South Sudan and really turns that game around as a playmaker. And I think he's just been phenomenal ever since. So I think if you're a Celtics fan, you should just be enjoying the summer because your team just won a championship and that doesn't happen very often. But if you're watching the Olympics, which I know many of you are, and you're trying to kind of scrutinize or analyze the way the players are playing, I would urge you to really just hone in on Derrick White and recognize what it is that we're watching. We're watching a guy who was a Division II player, didn't have any Division I offers out of high school, got traded, ended up getting drafted after a great college career, played for San Antonio, got traded to the Celtics. People weren't sure how that fit was going to go. Famously, some people criticized that trade, and now he's not only an elite player, borderline all-star, but he's one of the most effective guards on the U.S. Olympic basketball team. Like, that is just insane to think about. And so I think that shouldn't be overlooked. It shouldn't be brushed aside because ultimately that, the fact that I'm watching Steph Curry and I'm watching Derrick White and I'm like, they're actually better when Derrick White's on the floor. And the numbers so far, the plus minus numbers have definitely matched the eye test on that. It's not something that should be brushed aside. So I don't want to spend too long in the Olympics, but I do want to say that Derrick White has been absolutely thriving. Jrue Holiday, needless to say, has been thriving as well. He's been effective, efficient, defensively. He's a menace, as he always is. And again, this is the second Olympics. He was one of the first guys that USA Basketball wanted to prioritize making the team. People wondered earlier on, like, why is Jrue Holiday somebody that they're right now prioritizing? There's a whole lot of stars that were left off that list. And I think that he and Derrick are both kind of showing the world why they were priorities for this roster, and why maybe moving forward that role players will be treated differently because you need good role players. And in reality, both those guys, they're role players, but they're really stars. I mean, they play like stars. They're stars in their roles, right? And what is really a role player, right? It's just a guy that is not prioritizing scoring. And that's kind of how we've defined it. So I think that just want to say that Derrick White, Jrue Holiday, to me, are two great storylines out of this Olympic run. And then I'll give a shout out to a couple other guys that have stood out to me. I think Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis have both been phenomenal. And they're also guys that are not necessarily primary scoring options. I think Anthony Davis can be at times, but at their best, they're not. And so they're really thriving off of that here as well, that they're able to get easy baskets. They're not the defense's priority. And they're able to do what they do really well, great, and that's play defense. And play defense alongside guys like Jrue Holiday, Derrick White, Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum. So they're really benefiting from all of that. And so, yeah, that's my observation from USA. I think that we should kind of refrain from the discourse around whose team it is and who's the top scorer and who should be the top scorer. And should we be featuring more guys, because all of that is secondary here. I mean, I'm watching gymnastics. Certain gymnasts aren't even getting to perform, right? And you got to stay sharp and you got to stay ready to go. You're watching Canada basketball. I don't know if people have been watching Canada, but Jamal Murray is effectively a non-factor for Canada right now, whereas guys like RJ Barrett and Dylan Brooks look like all-stars. And so I don't think Olympic basketball, international basketball is the place to make assessments about players, his ceilings or floors, or he's better than him, because right now Steph Curry doesn't look good, right? And we know that he's a great basketball player, right? He has a crazy resume, and just we know that, right? So that's my thinking on it. And feel free to disagree. I know a lot of people, I wrote an article about this for Celtics blog. I got some pushback. So feel free to disagree if you think that it actually is a problem that Jason Tatum's not scoring 15 and that he's not one of the kind of go-to guys in this team. I don't think it is. I think what does matter is he does seem to be in a funk with his shot. And I don't think that USA basketball is the place to work that funk out because, again, you're getting a handful of shots tonight. He took one jump shot today, right? So if you're a shooter, I played basketball growing up. I still play basketball. I would say that I'm a shooter, but I'm relatively inconsistent. And I do know that if I only get 3 shots in a game, which sometimes happens, I'm not breaking out of a shooting funk, right? So you need more shots than that. And so I think that, everybody should just kind of chill out about his shooting and enjoy the Olympic experience and watching 3 Celtics players really be important players on this team, and particularly the 2 guards. And then we can kind of leave that conversation for the fall, for preseason, for the regular season, when he's able to kind of get back in his usual swing, his usual shot attempts, usual rhythm. So those are my thoughts on the Olympics.
I love going to MLB games during the summer. I love going to concerts, games, sporting events, and there's no better way to get tickets to all of those events than the Game Time app. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. You can download the Game Time app, you can see any event that you search, you can put the location in, where you're based, see upcoming concerts, sporting events, whatnot, and get the best deals, best prices guaranteed. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. On top of the fact that it's already a really good deal, download the app, terms apply, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
The other thing that I wanted to share a little bit more about, I know I did this in episode 1, is about the Celtics off season. Because I'm starting this podcast kind of in the middle of things, we'll be jumping around talking about some topics that I haven't necessarily touched on here. And then once the season starts, we're in a regular flow, this will be a little bit more of like your normal react to recent events type podcast. But I wanted to be able to jump and refer back to some things that we have not necessarily, discussed on here since we're only 2 episodes in. So I was in Vegas for 10 days. I mentioned this last episode, and Vegas was an awesome experience because I just got to meet a whole bunch of people in the media space, people in the front office space, scouts, agents, coaches. And it was really cool to just learn about individuals that I've been around, but not haven't necessarily talked to. Like some of the Celtics assistants are people that I've, met in person. I wave to them sometimes, but I haven't had like in-depth conversations with, and I got to change that at Summer League. So that was super cool. But I wanted to specifically share kind of my biggest takeaways from Summer League. And my biggest takeaway, number 1, is that Jaden Springer is an NBA-ready player. I think I already felt that way before, and he only played in 1 game in Summer League, but I was a foot away from it. It was my second time seeing him play extended minutes in person. First was in Atlanta last year when he played that 1 G League game. But this was really an awesome showing for him, and I really believe in Jaden Springer as a player. And so I'm putting that out there because I have a pretty good track record with my takes so far. I've only been doing this for a year, so you can't pull up like old takes from 2008 on me the way you can for like established media members. But I will say I think Jaden Springer is going to be a great role player in the NBA one day. Whether that's this year or 2 years from now, I don't know. I don't know if there's room for him this year. I hope they can find it, but I don't know if there is. But that's my hot take from Vegas Summer League. I've already said this on other CLNS stuff, so maybe you've heard it, but I had to put it out here on this podcast in case people haven't heard me talk about this before. It's something that I just thought defensively he showed a level of maturity and growth. He wasn't fouling. He was guarding Jaime Jaquez, one of the best players in all of Summer League, and really doing a great job with it. And then offensively, he just made the game look easy. So it was just super cool to watch. And then outside of him, I don't know if I saw any NBA-ready players. I like Anton Watson. I like Baylor Shireman. They both were good. They were both fine. But they weren't great, and great is what you want to see for a player from summer league if they're going to play in an NBA rotation, and particularly if the NBA rotation is the Celtics. So yeah, that's my perspective on just the rotation. I don't think we're going to see a whole bunch of guys from that summer league roster actually play with the Celtics, starting with in the fall. And the reality is there's not really minutes or roster spots to go with, because you brought back the entire roster, which is pretty wild. The only two guys that haven't re-signed are Shea Brissett and Svi Mykhailiuk, and I expect that that'll remain the case based on our conversations with Brad Stevens and based on the fact there's only one roster spot open, and I think it's going to either remain open or be left for a big. So that was kind of the second thing that I wanted to get to, was just the whole summer league experience. Highly recommended if you're a fan. I mentioned this last episode, but highly recommend attending summer league and just kind of being around the NBA, being around players, coaches. This is your best bet to meet a player. It's your best bet to get an autograph or a photo if you're into that kind of stuff. There's just so much going on, and there's actually it feels like there's more media and staff and coaches and team personnel than there are fans. I don't think that's statistically accurate, but that's what it feels like at times. So if you're a fan and you're trying to meet somebody, your odds are pretty good. So those are the two main things that I wanted to touch on. In general, these episodes are going to be pretty short, but you can also find me on the Gardner Report, on CLNS, all access videos that I do with Bobby Manning. So if you need more content, there is no shortage of content. We just recorded a post-game show about the South Sudan Team USA game. But I wanted to touch on the Derrick White point in particular, because I do feel like Derrick White has gotten the short end of the stick a little bit here with the whole Olympic stuff, because when he was first elected to Team USA, the discourse became around it should have been Jaylen Brown's spot, and maybe it should have. I don't know what happened there politically with Nike. I'm going to stay out of making assumptions because I really don't know. But it should have been a moment of recognition and celebration for Derrick White, and instead it wasn't. And then secondly, now, he had this really good game last game, and then Jason Tatum's DNP totally overshadowed that. So I think today, in the Celtics world, in the Celtics media, it should be about Derrick White, and it should be about celebrating his play. And I don't think he really cares. I've talked to his dad a bunch of times. I think his dad has made clear to me, he's a guy that just does what he needs to do. He gets his stuff done. But we should give him the respect as a fixture of this team, and maybe as the most beloved player on the Celtics, honestly, to give him this opportunity to shine and to not have it be in the context of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, which is hard because they're the guys, right? They're the superstars, and they're always going to kind of dominate the narratives and dominate the discourse. So I just want to give him his flowers and his due, because again, we're watching a perfect basketball player, and I don't want to say that to be dramatic. Obviously, he's not a perfect basketball player in reality, but the basketball that we're watching from him right now is that he's a guy that is shooting well, he's defending at a high level, he's throwing good passes, he's playmaking, he's a pass-first player on this team, which is good because you want that when you have this many stars around you. He's rebounding, he's taking care of the ball, he's not giving up on plays, he's deflecting passes. Again, you really have to watch. If you missed the South Sudan game, I urge you to watch it and just watch Derrick White. Watch where he's going, watch where he's cutting, watch defensively, how he's guarding 4 guys at once. He's helping fix other guys' mistakes. So, and again, all of this could be said for Jrue Holiday too, but I think he's just more established at this stage that it needs a little bit less attention on it. Derrick White wasn't supposed to be on this team a month ago. He was literally going to Mexico, and now this happened. So I think it's super remarkable. And I don't want to say it's Jaylen Brown's fault for the Derrick White stuff, because I don't think his intention was to make it a whole Derrick White shouldn't be here conversation. But it was unfortunate how it all happened. And so that's my perspective on it. Is less about it's Jalen's fault. It's more about now moving forward. I think that when things go awry here for Team USA, we also do need to keep a good perspective on what Derrick White has brought to the table all year. So I'm going to leave it there. Shorter episode today just because we did a reaction video. We did a whole Garden Report episode. But please do subscribe to You Got Boston on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple. Comment, and then feel free, feel free to message me on Twitter. My handle is just Noa Dalzell now, because I also cover the WNBA for SB Nation. So just Noa Dalzell. You can DM me. I pretty much always see the DMs. If you reply to my tweets, I sometimes don't see it, but if you DM me, I go through those and I check those, and I usually respond unless it's a bot, which I do get a lot of bots. So if you have questions or things that you want me to talk about on the show, this is the time to do it, because it's July, August. It's going to be pretty slow. I'm going to be recording these 3 times a week, maybe even more if there's interest in more stuff. So message, if you want to hear more about the night the Celtics won the championship, I can talk more about that. If you want to hear more about off-season moves, conversations with DJ McClay about the players. I had a million of those. I was the only media member there towards the second half of Summer League. So I got a whole lot to talk about, a whole lot to discuss with you all. And we'll be going live like once or twice a week. So that's an opportunity to get your questions too. But if you want a whole episode on a topic, like I can do that. So just let me know, message me on Twitter. It's the best place to access me, and subscribe, share with your friends. If you have friends that are looking for a new Celtics show. I'm a big listener of Celtics podcasts. I still am, even as a member of the media. I have not stopped listening. I love some of the work that's out there. Locked on Celtics by John Krause. That's my favorite podcast. So shout out to that show. If you haven't listened to it, recommend you do. But there's a whole lot of great stuff on CLNS Media. There's a whole lot of great stuff out there as far as Celtics coverage goes. So again, I'm Noa Dalzell. I cover the WNBA for SB Nation. I cover the Celtics for CLNS Media and for Celtics blog. Been doing this for about a year. It's been an awesome year, 1 for 1 as far as covering a team that's won the championship. And excited to get this podcast going, the show on the road, and appreciate you all for tuning in. So feel free to reach out and enjoy the rest of your week.